Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas Collins, LLC, specializing in business litigation and personal injury cases for over 40 years.
Well, thank you. That's a very humbling introduction. There's a lot of stories in that have a lot to not do with me, but has to do with the people around me as I've grown to really appreciate, as I've matured in business and as I've seen people develop. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Before I start my comments, though, let me invite you just to watch a video with me. I'm going to get familiar with the remote here. I've got a screen on one side. I don't have a lot of slides, so just get comfortable. But I do want you to enjoy this video and remember this hashtag. Now, a hashtag for all of you that are over 35 years old is something you write down on a sheet of paper, and when you take a picture or you have a story you want to tell, you find a child or grandchild who's younger, and I want you to hashtag it. But our hashtag for this year, the year of our centennial, is Community 100. We're going to start with this video, and make sure the sound works.
T19, Saurage founded an extraordinary coffee company to honor his friends, his neighbors, his community. In celebration of Community Coffee's 100th year, let's raise a cup to 100 communities that continue to inspire us. The wonderful, passionate, caring, sometimes quirky, and always incredible communities of community coffee drinkers who are helping to usher in our next 100 years. Because it wouldn't be a party without great people and great refreshments.
Okay, that was a presentation. Thank you. Isn't that awesome? That video was put together for a speaking engagement I had out of state, actually, in November. And I remember thinking, how will I feel in January 2019 when we really kick off the formal, calendar year of the centennial of this company? And I got goosebumps watching that. And I've seen this video 8 or 12 times. So it's the first time I've sat or stood with a group of folks who contributed so much to this company and family to watch this and say, we're here. And as you know, Michael Jordan won his 6th title with Chicago Bulls. If there's a picture of him where he's emotionally just distraught, he's crying, holding the trophy, crying. And they asked him, Michael Jordan, why are you so upset? You just won your 6th title with Chicago. He says, because I got to wake up tomorrow and I don't know how I'm going to do it again. And that's kind of how it feels. You're here at 100 years. And tomorrow's another day. We got the blessing of another day, and I'm going to talk mainly about that, more so than the history. But what are we going to do next? Because this is just a number, and the future's ahead of us. So let's breeze through the history of community coffee. I'm in a hometown crowd, so I know that I'll get some leniency here. But the company was started in 1919 by a true entrepreneur. That's my great-grandfather, Saurage. He and his brother moved up from the White Castle area to an area here known as Dixie, Louisiana. Dixie, Louisiana, that area doesn't exist anymore. It's beneath the Exxon refinery. He came up here for the construction of this great refinery and opened a general store, dry goods, that he and his brother operated, sold many things. But this was the introduction to coffee, because he would travel to New Orleans and purchase sugar and coffee and other commodities and bring them up to Baton Rouge. And somewhere along the way, he fell in love with the people and he fell in love with the product. And by 1924, he was out of the grocery business. He was full in on community coffee sales of the product. Patience with me with this microphone. But he had been selling the product in the store and having such great success that he decided to commit everything. The whole family was going to focus on coffee. And as all entrepreneurial businesses start, it began at home, in his backyard, with a coffee mill in his garage. And he employed family and friends and neighbors and had a belief that he was going to do something great. And it was hard going, as you can all imagine, for the first many decades of the business. But that's the humble beginnings that all companies start. And in our case, it wasn't easy. Baton Rouge had 3 or 4 roasters in the city. There's still some buildings that still exist today of some of the old roasters. But he began to have people believe and follow him, including his son, H.N. Saurage, my father, who followed after that. And it was significant that the son and the grandson were significant because my grandfather brought in manufacturing. He had a great palate. He believed in coffee roasting. He wanted control over quality, and he brought us into the age of production. My father, Norman, brought us into the age of branding, true branding, bringing a voice to the product and to the people that really has allowed us to grow and be a sustainable business through modern brand times. Branding wasn't really a competitive point of difference until the 60s. But in the 60s and later, brand marketing is what we're living through today. And that's when Community Coffee truly innovated in the branding sense and also innovated with packaging, introducing new products like the Firm Pack, which you'll remember, taking some bold steps with whole bean coffee, with a coffee place, a coffee house that existed in 1981 that was decades ahead of the coffee house rush. My mother participated in that, but it was a bold move of innovation, and that's what I give the great credit to my father for innovation. Then the company took another bold step a quarter century ago, and they let me enter the company. And working for a family business, you can imagine it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done and the most challenging thing I've ever done. But along the way, what I've learned is there's a few basic tenets that I can now look backwards and say, how did we achieve 100 years of success? It wasn't all us, certainly. It wasn't all the brand, certainly. There was some other magic formula to the secret success that we call Community Coffee. And I'm going to share some of that with you. That's all the history I'm going to share on Community Coffee, because I believe you all know it. You are this community. You know people who've been involved with the company. You've seen the growth. But what are we doing now and why? First of all, when I was CEO of the company, I looked back at what our principles were. And we created something called core values. Now, core values have evolved over time, and I think everybody has one of these. The purpose and core values of our company are the driving force behind everything we do. A lot of people paint the walls with that message, but at Community Coffee, it's real. We believe that we hire with core values, we motivate with core values, we evaluate performance based on core values. That how we work as a group is more important than what we do as a group and our results. Why is that? Well, Community Coffee is a family business. And frankly, if the core values at the dinner table aren't reflected in the workplace, then you probably don't need to be working there. At least that's the way I was raised. So we draw people into the company that want to live the values. They're good values. They're easy to adopt, but they're shared. And that creates a basis of trust and camaraderie around the brand. That's been a secret to our overall success during the times when the company faced great challenge. Katrina was only one of the great challenges. At that point, Community Coffee was in 8 states. 60% of our profits were south of I-10 on the Gulf Coast, and we were in trouble. But a group of folks who understand their place in the business and what their responsibility was to the brand, we made it through Katrina, and we grew. By 2013, we were in 14 states, 12 or 14 states. That's slow growth. And today we're in only 22 states. So there's another story in there about core values, and it's one that's kind of subtle as you read it, which is as we grow over the last century, the reason that we survived and how we're going to prosper in the future century or two is that we will be patient, we'll do the right thing, and we'll accept slow growth as long as we have people development and our brand wins. So I'm going to touch on a few of those things. So along the way, when we had these challenges, we had to bring people around a voice of what is Community Coffee, what does the brand represent? And we say it all the time, but our first name's community. So the first thing we do, which is kind of a funny word, and for the longest time, people can identify what is community. Is that a high value or low value product? Well, today in America, community is a very powerful term. We're blessed with a great brand name. But to us, it's our obligation to others. Despite all the success that we have with growth and sales and geography, in the end of the day, giving back is part of what we believe is important to the future of the company. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to have 3 messages. One is that core values. I've touched on that already. The other is the power of a brand. And the third is the responsibility we have to continue to improve the areas where our employees, our customers work and live. And we take that very seriously at Community Coffee. It is core to what we do. So I want to share a few of these with you because you may or may not recognize them. Some of them you will. And the first would be our obligation to education. Education has been a very important aspect of our business for over 30 years now in this community, recognizing the need for better education, recognizing that we can just facilitate kind gestures from consumers to their schools, helping teachers do more in that classroom, a very simple gesture. And I would guess that 30 years ago, we probably were a much smaller company. We probably made a much smaller impact, but that little impact was important and it grew with time. That's the one you're most familiar with. But the second is, as we really evaluated who we were as a company, we recognized there were two other areas that we were neglecting. One is sustainability. Now that's kind of a trendy word right now, but sustainability is very important to us. It means the world to us because we buy coffee from 20 countries around the world. Most of these farmers, there's 25 million farmers, farming families around the world. Most of them live a very poor living, very meager living, and they're farmers. And if anybody is a farmer in the room, you know that's a very, very, very difficult business, and year to year, you never know what your fortune is. So we look at sustainability, and we're talking a lot more about this, and we're going to talk about this for the next century because it's important. It's not environmental sustainability, it's cultural sustainability, sustaining the economy. It's making sure that these growing communities, farming communities, don't lose all the youth to the large cities and abandon the farms. That puts coffee at risk, puts our industry at risk. So we're spending a lot of time on doing the right thing at origin as we've tried to do here at home. And we do things with coastal restoration and, of course, trying to improve our business practices. But this was an area that we believe as part of this community in Baton Rouge that we felt responsible to continue to provide emphasis and education around. And the second is our support of the military. Sorry, I'm struggling with the little pointer here. The military to us is just a family, is something we've chosen to be very proud of, to support, and do anything we can to play a role. And as a small company, starting back right at the beginning of the Gulf War, it's probably the first record we have of us doing something where we just gave a little extra, where we were sending coffee overseas, and one of our customer service representatives just threw some extra coffee in there in a handwritten note. And now today it's a formal program where we ship coffee around the world to individuals serving the military in any environment, any theater, because we know that coffee provides comfort. I believe coffee provides comfort to those who are far from home. So this is another area that we have engaged with the USO North Carolina. We've engaged with other groups, Folds of Honor, those who are helping our military abroad and at home, because we believe that as long as there's an America, there's going to be a reason to support our military, and we'll be a part of that. And then sadly, one of the things that we've really fine-tuned our, we have quite an engine now behind this, is disaster relief. When Katrina occurred, it changed our company forever. It changed the way we valued our relationships and our ability to communicate with our employees. It changed the responsibility that we had as management to diversify our geography and ensure that we had a strong and growing community coffee for the future. It also showed us the best side of our employees in a terrible situation. We all have our stories, but our employees did extremely well. We all changed our jobs. We all became servants, not for the company, but to our customers and to our neighbors. We all did that in this area. But we realized that it was a galvanizing force, and it supported everything that we had on this card, that doing good is good. Helping others, love all, serve all is part of our purpose that we have the ability to maybe do. So since then, we have basically any event that happens on the Gulf Coast or in our geography, the East Coast, tornadoes, hurricanes, wind events, ice storms, employees are mobilized. These are employees who have other jobs. They stop what they're doing and they go help. And we serve coffee and their families, and we'll go support the first responders primarily. It's not something we talk about. I think you should know about it because it happens here a lot, and it's part of our story that we all share together. But it's something that we believe as a corporate citizen, if we have the ability to do it, then do it. And that is the right thing to do. But we have also some amazing stories that comes out of it because, again, it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the summer or the middle of the winter, coffee provides comfort. And serving somebody a cup of coffee who's away from home, out of their home, or helping others has been really rewarding to us. So moving forward, we believe that doing those things and doing them well will be very important. we have a bigger challenge over the next year, much less the next 100 years of coffee, and I'll share a little bit of that with you. We have great competition. My mom stated that we are the largest family-owned and operated retail brand of coffee in America. That's an outstanding place to be, an outstanding statement. I'd only add on to that, we're one of the few remaining family-owned retail coffee brands in America. We're in an environment that is highly competitive. The competitors that we have on our scorecard are international. Only one of them is American. It's a public company. It's Smuckers. But everybody else is a global company. So we are the small fish in a really fierce environment. But coffee, when you talk about the runway for community coffee and the growth that's ahead of us is enormous. So I want to give you some facts that you may not realize. In 2015, the National Coffee Association researched the economic impact of coffee. So we could go to Washington, D.C. and to our decision makers and explain to them the value of the coffee industry. Coffee represents 1.6% of the United States GDP, gross domestic product. This is 2015. It has an economic impact of $225 billion. And if you think about your purchasing behaviors and the lattes or the pounds of coffee you purchase at home, consumers in the United States of America will purchase $74 billion worth of coffee in 2015. So it's probably about the same today. Well, that's enormous. That draws in lots of competition. And for us, it creates tremendous opportunity to be a great brand as we grow. Employs 1.7 million jobs are in the coffee sector, 1.7 million jobs. And the good news for all of us is it generates over $20 billion in taxes a year. So we love the industry. We think it's a great place to be, and we don't know why there's not more family roasters in the business. But there is a clear story about our success and what's going to drive us forward. The first is going to be innovation, creativity, appealing to new consumers' interests. The second is to recognize the value of our brand. Our brand is nothing more than a collection of people working for a common cause. It reflects this community here in Baton Rouge. When we grow community coffee, we talk about our values. These are the values we share. These are good values, and it's amazing that people who come to explore our brand and hear our story are saying, well, God, you guys do the right thing. You follow through with your promises. You ask the right questions. And it just seems natural to do that. But for some reason, in the world as it is, seems to be today, it's becoming less and less frequent. So we believe the brand's very important and the values we share. So as we're looking forward, we're going to do two things. One, I want you to participate in. I'd like to provide time for Q&A. But we would like to generate stories. Storytelling is very powerful in our business. It's powerful with the kids. They love it on social media, but we want to empower you to be part of that story because we all have a community coffee story. So if this is your story being here today, take a picture, remember the hashtag, tag it, send it to us. But if you have a story, tell us your story. Because I travel around the U.S. and I hear these stories, people who've left home, people who ship coffee across from one state to another, someone who's been displaced. But we want to collect those stories from our employees, our customers, our neighbors, because that is the fabric of community coffee. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is probably one of the most awesome quotes that this has existed. This means I'm out of time. Boy, you guys are good. I don't think it's going to work, but this quote has existed since the day I walked into community coffee. My father created it, and it's
We're down to one line.
And it's everything we do has to be as good as our coffee. Boiling down everything we do into one statement is probably the most important gift one can give. And I would say in pursuit of this, that the next 100 years, we know what impact it's going to have here. We're going to create jobs. We're going to generate revenue for this community. But we're going to do something else. We're going to share a gift to others, a great story. And to be successful the next 100 years, we truly believe the following. One, I truly believe the following for certain, that we will always remain a private, family-owned company. That has allowed us to persevere, and I believe it's required to be successful in the future. Number two, that we will always adhere to our core values. At the end of the day, that little slip of paper is the second most valuable thing we have, second most only to the brand. And then thirdly, the goal for Community Coffee, the takeaway I want you to have, and I thank you for letting me share this with you today, is that we want to be the most beloved, trusted, and best tasting brand of coffee in North America. That is our goal. And we're doing so, we're going to bring this community and this story and your stories along with us as we move into the future. Thank you very much. I'd like to entertain any questions you may have, because I believe I have a few minutes left. Yes.
Lauren Mahler, I'm with Blue Cross Foundation and a fellow tech grad. So
Go Bulldogs.
Go
Yeah.
Bulldogs. In terms of growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years and getting community coffee into other states, what does that look like for you guys? I know I have family from all over, and when they come here, they want community coffee because they may not have it where they live. So I'm curious to know what those expansion efforts look like.
Yeah, the question from Lauren was, what's the expansion efforts? What does success look like as we grow? I left a whole pocket of information out because I tried to boil down to what I thought was important. We have less than a 5% market share in the southern United States where we exist. Pretty small market share, though we are one of the highest market share companies in the United States, because most of it's controlled by only 2 companies. And we have 28 states ahead of us. So growth to us is tremendous. So here's our growth goals. To give you context on that, the reason I shared that number is that we've tripled our revenues in just the last 15 years. So we're growing geographically, but we're growing because of our strategy of not only getting a market share foothold like that, but everywhere we go, we'll go to grocery, we'll go to offices, restaurants, convenience stores, hotels, so we become a part of that community, and then we'll go to the next state. That's why that growth has been so slow, state after state. We've been in 22 states for 5 years now, because we're saturating. So for us, it's tremendous opportunity to expand our operations. Like we purchased a new roasting plant down in New Orleans, so we're out of capacity here. And so that growth and employing people along the way is the opportunity we see. So will we be the largest coffee company in America? That's not the goal. Absolutely it's not. We're very happy with the share we have in the South now, and if we could replicate that everywhere and employ people in trucks to deliver coffee to facilities like this, to us, that's success. I hope that answered your question.
What region of the world produces the best coffee bean? What is your favorite way to brew coffee and why?
Great question. What region of the world produces the best coffee? It's personal choice. I really can't answer. Papua New Guinea is my favorite, but it's a very small producer of coffee. Most of the coffee we enjoy and you enjoy is from Brazil and Central America. But it's a very personal choice. We all have different favorite coffee. So I'm not dodging the question, but I don't want to insult any of the other 19 countries that we import from. Juan Valdez may be waiting for me outside. I brew coffee 2 ways primarily. I use a electric brewer. I mean, I have my scoop that I've used forever to scoop coffee in a coffee filter, and I'll brew a pot of coffee. Measured. It's not really measured. It's really the scoop. But nonetheless, it's a measure that's unique to me, and it's the way I enjoy coffee. We all have different ways of enjoying coffee. And the second way is I'll use a French press. I'll use any kind of pour-over method without a filter when I want to take time to really. It's kind of like steeping tea. You know, I really want to experience coffee and just enjoy the process of making coffee. So I do that as often as I do an electric brewer at 6 a.m. in the morning. So those are the 2 ways I prefer to make it at home and on the road. I brew coffee on the road when I travel. Marvin?
Could you describe the Southwest Airlines deal and what that meant to the company?
Yeah,
and was Hank really responsible for that?
So Hank needed an airline that matched with his golf tour and his sailing tour. We're going to have that story posted where others can experience it. It exists today, but it's buried in kind of our social media. Here's how it boils down. Martin's question is about Southwest Airlines. We wanted that business for over a decade. I remember writing a letter to them when I first flew on Southwest Airlines in 1995. I wrote a letter saying, love your airline, would love your business. We got the right people in the room, was number one, who were willing to listen to the story of our brand. Southwest Airlines had their own brand of coffee, Lyft. They had somebody private labeling for a price. They bid out the business for a price. And we got into the final selection as a brand versus private label. And we told them we'd give them a private label price. We never did. And so we made a brand presentation, and much of it is like that video I showed you of here's our story, here's our values, where they overlap with Southwest values, and how we serve our customers. And it was so powerful that the flight attendants at Southwest run the airline. They are the decision makers of what happens in that cabin, from uniforms all the way to products they serve. And the head flight attendant representative there just started crying. And this is a meeting with, you're talking about all the senior people of their company. It was 8 of them and a number of us, and telling her story. She had a community coffee story, and she went to school in Louisiana, and she was telling stories about her experiences and her memories and being a flight attendant and how tough it was. Everybody had a story in that room, and they realized that it was more than just the core values, this emotional connection that with a brand that they felt that perhaps they were willing to listen further. And then we developed a program of giving in Mexico with them, and to this date, so it was an emotional sale, and it was fact. This was a real story and a partner whose culture's aligned in ours. We are the only co-branded item on that airplane. The only one that has their logo and a company's logo together on a package. That cup is the only example on that flight of co-brand. That's how much they believed in our story. So it was a great win for us. We're real proud of that. Yes.
Two things. One, as a recipient of the Cash for Schools program following Katrina down in New Orleans, that check that came to us for the Cash for Schools really made a difference, and we thank you for that. But the question is, after Katrina, it was rumored in New Orleans that the evacuees were tracked by the request for community coffee. Can you speak to that?
And yeah, this may be my last question. I've never heard nobody's asked me that question. I represented it differently. I remember walking into a meeting with management with USA Today, and I said, "Did you see where they tracked all the evacuees? They're everywhere that our product sales were just coffee and chicory sales in particular had exploded. Atlanta in particular, and it's like somebody slapped a pan of water, and wherever the droplets fell of New Orleans people who were displaced, our shipments followed." And we created new markets. We were shipping coffee all over the U.S., but I don't know if you ever saw the visual, they had a concentration of color to show where the most Louisiana people were. And our sales distribution, this is a true story, looked just like that. So I don't know if we followed them or they followed us. I don't know who got the data from who, but I remember, I still have that. And I was amazed because that was an emotional graphic also, but it was also the story of a lot of our growth that followed. Do I have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay, I think, yes.
Is there an organized plan for determining who gets a sack of coffee on each?
I'm so glad you asked, and I'm so glad that I'm prepared to answer that question. Know your audience. Okay, so there's one bag of, a couple of things. If you take your values card, if you see a coaster, take your coaster. If you didn't get one, please, your thirsty stone. We should have some more up front. The bag of coffee, so our anniversary date is April 1st, 1919. So, if your birthday, you got to honestly check here, if your birthday, day and month, not year, it's not the oldest person at the table, but if your birthday is the closest to April 1st, you get the bag of coffee. So, talk amongst, except for Hank, because his birthday is April 1st. Imagine that. And that's not even a joke, that's true. All right, thank you very much.
Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas Cullens, LLC, specializing in business litigation and personal injury cases for over 40 years.